Well, hello. I'm here with Doug, and we're going to talk about jamming. It is Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. And so there's a story on Tom's Hardware about uh, burglaries in Minnesota. There were 9 burglaries, and what these crooks did was they turned on a jammer and jammed the security cameras first. And I haven't heard of this before, but it is pretty obvious. Everybody's security cameras work by Wi-Fi, and you can just buy a jammer online for a few $100. They're illegal to use, but then they won't get any video. It seems like a brilliant idea, and I bet it would work at a lot of places. Unless your camera is actually connected with a hardwired cable, it'll knock it out. And so that when I put this on Mastodon, somebody immediately said, this is the real use case of the flipper. And I said, a flipper couldn't possibly jam Wi-Fi, but it can. I went and found a demonstration. There's the Computer Noob has an article, how to jam frequencies with the Flipper Zero. So I don't know if a Flipper Zero can really do it over a long enough range to be as effective, but you can to some extent jam frequencies with the Flipper Zero by putting in special firmware. So that's an interesting possible attack from it. You certainly could do a DAuth attack, which is much weaker. That will only affect Wi-Fi, but you can actually jam ranges to some extent with a Flipper Zero. So
Yeah. So Sam, a couple episodes ago, I talked about a truck being stolen, and the truck was being stolen. The cameras just went blank.
ah,
So what happened is there was a car that drove up, just to recap.
mhm.
There were a number of security cameras, and the ones that were close to the parking lot, the parking area,
Mm.
went blank, where the ones in the distance remained on. As soon
Innocent.
as
Yeah.
as soon as the lead car drove away, the cameras resumed. So one would assume,
Yeah.
not sure, but one would assume that those frequencies are being jammed, and or the cameras that were working were all wired, or they were out of range.
Yeah,
Now
makes
the
sense.
other yeah, the other thing is when they try and use license plate recognition to track the truck driving on highways or to see where it popped up, what they find is there was one car, and it happened to be a Mustang, that would go first. The cameras would blank. These are the state cameras for license plate recognition. Those cameras would go blank for, I don't know, 5-10 seconds, and then resume. And the thought is that that's a jammer, and the stolen car with the stolen plates is not being recorded.
Mm.
Now, if you ask me, that's kind of risky, because you're assuming that the jammer is going to work and be successful and be highly successful.
Well,
So
to be fair,
what are
I
your
mean,
thoughts?
well, to
Yeah.
be fair, you're a crook, right? And you're going to leave some evidence, and by jamming, you're going to leave less evidence. So it just seems
Right.
a risk reduction strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you would probably be able to get a higher power transmitter, and you
Yeah.
could take that signal and repeat it and kind of blast it out. So, and better, larger, bigger antenna, directional antenna might help as well to boost the signal of the flipper.
Well, yes, probably would, but I mean, clearly for what you're describing, you need a more powerful device.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I do know that on YouTube, I think his name's David Bombal. He does a lot of Cisco videos and networking, things like that. And he's talked about the flipper. And I believe he gave a demonstration where he was on a football field, and he was over 300 yards away, and the flipper was able to still jam, or no, I know. He did
Deoth,
a
probably.
no, it wasn't a deauth. It was, he used the flipper to get a key fob, the duplicated key
Right,
fob.
right.
And I believe he was a football field, if not 2 football fields away. So that's, 100 yards, maybe 200 yards. That's pretty good range, I would think.
Yeah, but that's a detectable signal, which is much weaker than a jamming signal.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Jamming signal, you want to overload, right? You want to overwhelm. The
Yeah.
signal of the jamming signal has to put the legitimate signal into the noise range, so
Right.
it gets drowned out, if you will.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I've got a story on the flipper too. This is
Yeah.
up in Canada. This is not in the US, but Canadians are politicians are hard at work up there in Canada. And I suppose that they will be in the US as well. And they want to make devices like Flipper illegal.
Yeah.
Now, devices like that are already illegal, and they're not specifically calling out the flipper, but they're saying any device that can intercept and pick up a like a key fob or garage door, anything that's able to reproduce those signals. Doggone it, we need to make those illegal because only criminals are going to use those.
Yeah. I went to Layer One Con a few years ago, and there's a guy there giving a talk about how by like 1850 they outlawed lockpicks for exactly this reason.
Yes, and that's highly successful.
Yeah, he said they succeeded in ending the development of locks, which is why the locks we're using today were designed in 1850, which is why they're so easy to pick.
Yeah. And if you want to see how easy locks are to pick, most locks, go over to YouTube and there's the lock picking lawyer.
Yeah,
And it's amazing. Like a lot of these padlocks that you pay $50 for, you can take two hammers, wrap them together, and it's quicker to open them with the key.
yeah. I mean, that's why I used to teach lock picking in my ethical hacking class, and a whole class of students within 45 minutes, they're all picking a lock. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I went to the lockpick village at DEF CON. I learned how to do it. You take the pins out of some of the locks. You make it easier. You make ones at one pin, two, three, four, or five, and then you can practice. And after if you go step by step, it's very easy to teach everybody how to pick a lock. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
And
not
and
that
there
hard at all.
yeah, and that's not to say that there aren't some locks that are more difficult.
Yeah.
There are, but they're also extremely pricey.
Well, apparently not. The $900 lock
No?
on the White House is easily picked. As you might expect in any field where the quality is not obvious, the price is not well connected to the quality.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the issue is that law in Canada, they were thinking about getting in cars, and what people say is there's no car made in the last 30 years that you can actually get into with a flipper. That's what I've seen pen tests say that because all a
Uh,
flipper does is record and replay. It doesn't able to make the mathematics to predict the next one.
yeah, I'm not sure because we've got the video that I don't know if I played that,
Mm.
but you can see that there's a Mustang that drives up,
Yeah,
and in less than 20 seconds, somebody's in the car and the car is open and running.
sure, but he's not using a flipper zero to do that.
No, I'm not. We don't know. We
Well,
don't
yeah,
know
but I
what
mean,
device.
but the people that's what I've read. People say the flipper zero is far too simple and elementary a device to do a
Oh,
attack on a modern car.
yeah, yeah. There are other devices out there that
Right.
are much more expensive, but much more efficient.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
yeah,
are the ones that you might want to outlaw, but outlawing the flipper is kind of pointless.
yeah. I would agree. That's like outlying fences that are 3 feet high to keep people out,
Yeah, yeah. Or outlawing
something like that.
lockpicks, which some American states do, but not California. Yeah, anyway,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
this keeps going around, but they keep outlawing like hacking tools. They did it in Germany, they did it in other countries. It keeps going around. Like
yeah,
Kali Linux was outlawed in some countries. I may still be. This is the endless debate of the dual use technology.
yeah. And all this is going to do is drive up the price of Flipper,
Well,
right?
yeah, sure. It'll make it more illegal and exciting.
Yeah, more
When I
exciting.
was a kid, they said this about drugs. They said if you legalize drugs, people will consume them less. I don't think that's true, but the argument was that it's being illegal that makes them attractive.
To a certain degree, I think it is. And I think there's a hint of truth to that. I think it can go either way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
The other thing that I'll tell you about car fobs,
Mhm.
and this has happened to me twice, where I'll get a rental car and I'll be in a parking lot someplace and I'll push the button to unlock the car, and I get two cars that do the beep beep and unlock.
Oh, really?
And it's, oh my gosh, how could
That's
that
not
be?
right.
Must be two of us pressing the button at the same time.
Oh, that would
So
make,
then I push it again to lock it, and sure enough, beep beep, I get two cars that lock.
wow.
And I push the button
What,
again and beep beep.
I'm
So what's
interested, what
happened
brand of
is
car is that?
these were Chevrolets or Fords, American cars.
Because I know the old VW Bugs were that way. I had a friend, the old VW Bugs only had like a small number of possible keys. So I had a friend who went out and in a rush went to the car, unlocked the car, drove away, and the cops pulled him over and said it's somebody else's car. He said, "Oh no, it's the same color as my car. My key works." Oh, that isn't my stuff. It is just another, and that's why they didn't lock him up. The keys had such a small number of possibilities that your key might work in another VW Bug you would find.
Yeah, but you pull into a mall parking lot, Walmart parking lot at Christmas time.
Yeah,
You've got, I don't know how many codes, but there are probably millions of codes.
yeah,
But there is a finite number of
yeah.
those codes, and there are millions of GM cars that are out there that are all using the same key fob.
But this is no different than MAC addresses or anything else. You should be able to
Right.
make it like 24 bits to where the chance of a collision is very small.
Well, the chances of a collision are very small,
Well, it should
but
be
it's
so that you
still
would never see
finite.
it. You should, well, yeah, but it should be so that you shouldn't be able to have any anecdotes like that. That's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
but I told this story to a friend of mine, and he said, same thing happened to me.
Which tells me that it must be a small number of possibilities, like 1,000 possibilities. It can't be a million, or you would not have two of these stories.
Tr- yeah, true. But,
Yeah.
there are people who win the lottery multiple
Well,
times.
but this would mean that I could pretty easily make something that just broadcasts all 1,000 codes until I get in.
Yeah, yeah, true,
That's not
true.
good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
No disagreement there. All
Yeah.
right, you got another
Yeah.
story for
And I
us?
think it fits in with your story that there are devices that do just open the car. Apparently, there is
Yeah.
some security flaw that has not been addressed. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so it's yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, anyway,
Sam, I'll kind of tangent story here.
yeah.
When the Boeing 777 Max was first released,
Oh, yeah.
this is an older story, but there's a clock, right? I think it's a modified Linux operating system that Boeing uses. And the clock is set up, and I forgot the number of bits, but it's let's say 16 bits, and they're down to the millisecond or maybe the microsecond is what the clock. That's what the number of bits are allocated for. And the programmers said, and I don't know if this was intentional or unintentional, and you probably know this story. But when we got to essentially, we ran out of bits that we're now flipping over back to zero, like an odometer in a car, the plane would reboot, and it would take about 45 seconds. And it didn't matter if the plane was in flight, if it was on the ground, on the runway, taxiing, taking off, landing. And luckily, there were no planes that crashed. But the thought was that when the planes were parked in the evening, that the pilots and the airline would shut down the computers, and therefore they would never reboot during a flight because it would be maybe a year
Mm.
or whatever the time element was. We could look that up. I
Mm.
don't remember off the top of my head. But in reality, they don't shut the computers down, and they keep running. And it was two mistakes like that. So they increased the bits by, I think, 4, and now they're not going to have the problem because it'll take 50 years for the plane to reboot sometime, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. This is job security.
So this randomness,
Yeah,
sometimes you got to think through this, number of key codes.
yeah.
You would think GM that creates millions of cars would use more than 1,000 random numbers. So
Well, the
I'm
thing
just
is,
saying,
there are just so many little things to worry about. That
right?
somewhere in your development pipeline, there is some guy that's in a hurry that just uses some standard library without worrying about it.
You just pick a number, right?
Yeah,
Like we
yeah,
did the date code, we'd use 2 numbers for the
yeah,
year.
yeah,
And that worked fine until we came up to the end of the into the century.
yeah, yeah. I understand it. I've been in
Yeah.
a hurry and just done something that's good enough for now, and I'll fix it later.
Yeah, just like with security. All right, enough on that.
Yeah.
What's your other
Well, there's an
story
article
here?
here which again talks about the deep fakes, which we talked about previously. But what they have a few interesting new features. One is that they say the face swap attacks, there's specific software that will just replace the face in a video or a picture with another face. And they say these things have gone up by like 700% from the first to the second half of 2023. And there's tools like called Swap Face, Deep Face Live, and Swap Stream that do this. And now there's that story we talked about where they made a Zoom call with many fake people to trick someone into sending a lot of
Oh
money.
yeah.
But the other one they said was in last year, the FBI has warned about a rising number of scanners using deep fake technology to impersonate job candidates during interviews for remote positions. So you hire, and I've heard about this quite a bit. You hire somebody, and they are something like a North Korean agent pretending to be, like an American software engineer or something.
Yeah.
So the deep fakes are rising really fast. So we're going to see a lot more of them. And I remember
Oh yeah.
there was the
Yeah.
one just a few weeks ago, like Trump had a picture of him praying that was obviously AI created because he had too many fingers. This kind of
So
thing goes on all
so
the time.
now we have fake Zoom calls,
Yeah.
right? With CEOs that are directing people to do things where everybody is AI generated
And they
except
look
for one
good.
person
They
who's
look
the
like the right
victim.
person. They sound like the right
Sound like
person.
the yep.
This is
And
pretty
now what you're
disturbing.
saying is we've got job candidates doing that.
Yeah, yeah. You could just take a video of somebody like one of us and then apply for a job and appear in the Zoom call as us, sounding like us. And now, I got a lot of jobs that are fully remote. All my consulting gigs, none of those people know who I really am. I could be a North
A
Korean
deep
hacker
fake.
pretending to be
You could
Sam.
be AI.
I could, yeah, they're just hiring me. They're trusting me in their internal network. It's
Yeah,
pretty awful
yeah,
if you think about this. It reminds me of like back in the 90s when we just sent Microsoft Office attachments everywhere and double clicked them without realizing they could have scripts in them. But everybody did that all the time.
yeah,
None
yeah.
of us understood the risk. Yeah,
Even when you told them,
yeah,
don't click,
but it
people would
was it
say,
was
oh,
but it was how you
yeah,
do everything. Everything was a Word document or an Excel file attached to an email. Not doing that would seem to like paralyze your whole business.
yeah,
And so, I mean, if you couldn't get on a Zoom call like this and talk to people and then tell them to work and then check in tomorrow to see if they did it, and you're worried, is that really the right person? I don't understand how you get anything done.
right. Yeah, yeah. It's going to get challenging.
Yeah.
Well, it already has been, but I think we don't have a solution yet. Things are going to get worse.
Well, I have my traditional threat modeling solution. The fact is,
Yeah,
I'm too insignificant and unimportant for anybody to invest much effort into attacking me. But the problem is, it doesn't sound like it takes much effort to attack you anymore.
yeah, yeah, true. And,
Anyway, yeah.
to be fair about this, you don't need technology to do this because if we go back to World War II days and the Manhattan Project, there were some British spies that were had infiltrated, and
But they did.
Stalin knew what was going on, that a bomb was being created, and
Yeah.
it was kind of no surprise to him when Truman told him that.
Well, yeah, that's the old-fashioned technique, but they didn't actually
Yeah,
impersonate a specific person. They just, applied through channels. It's
yeah,
a more,
yeah, yeah,
so I mean, this is all any security measure does is make it more expensive to attack you.
yeah, yeah. True, true.
Anyway, let's go on. You've
So
got
I got
LastPass.
another one here,
Yeah.
kind of like, Apple, when you think of Apple and iOS and apps,
Well, Apple says they
yes,
charge 30%, but that's so they can make the store safe.
yes. But what's happened is there's a LastPass impersonator app,
Yeah,
or impersonation app, I should say, that appeared in the App Store that Apple had certified.
yeah,
And it turns out to be completely bogus. And it would go through and harvest your LastPass passwords or
yep.
your password vault. Now, if you took a look at it, it had 5-star reviews. There was no 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star. It was 100% 5-star, all one of them.
Yeah.
So,
And it's spelled last, LASS.
yeah. But
But
it was
still,
close. It was close enough, right?
yeah,
That you had to really kind of look, the little icon, right? You think, it's close enough. But here's how you test, right? Here's how you know that it was a fake. When you look to see the other apps that this author created, there was nothing.
yeah.
And you look at, I think there was the date that the author came on and started creating apps. So, it was fake.
Yeah, and looking at the number of
If
downloads is a clue too. I mean, the real LastPass must have millions of downloads, and this probably only
it's,
had a few.
yeah, the number of downloads. So, as you go through this, don't trust stars, don't trust the icon, don't trust the name, because sometimes we're all fallible and
But
we
what
see things.
that puts
Yeah.
such a burden on the end user. They're supposed to notice all these clues, and of course, a lot of them won't. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. But this kind of defeats the purpose of Apple in lawmakers' eyes.
yeah,
And this kind of goes back where Microsoft and Bill Gates was saying, "Oh, you can't remove Internet Explorer from Windows." And the judge goes into chambers, and the judge's
that's a
aide,
shortcut.
yeah, says, "Look, here's how you do it."
Yeah.
And so, this is kind of the same thing. Apple is saying, "Look, people are paying a premium for our security, and here they're not doing it."
Well,
Or they failed on us,
well, to
at
be
least
fair,
for this one. Yes.
I think the Apple App Store is much cleaner than the Google Play Store.
Oh,
And it's
definitely.
much cleaner than the short-lived Microsoft phone app store that was all full of spam. So, I mean, they do put a lot of effort into cleaning it, but I think it's also true that they charge outrageously too much money for that. And I think Europe is busting them. With European
Yeah.
regulations are forcing them to stop charging so much and allow alternative app stores.
What would be interesting, Sam, is if the European lawmakers made Apple go to the 99 cents. Like, didn't
Yeah,
isn't that what they
yeah.
did for songs? It was
That
99
was
cents.
that was
Am I mistaken on that?
that was not the Europeans. I believe that
No, 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 not the Europeans, but
was
Apple
Steve Jobs.
said,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, Steve Jobs said
Yeah.
99
He
cents.
forced the music
That's the
industry to knock it off and go down to 99 cents for a song. That's right. And I think that's essentially what the Europeans are going to do to Apple. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Apple's getting a taste of its own medicine, so to speak. We'll
Yeah.
see.
I mean,
We'll
this
see.
shows that there's some level of monopoly power and abuse that you will finally get punished, well, not apparently by the US system that is too corrupt to do anything, but apparently Europeans are able to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You got another story for us, Sam.
I got one more. There's an article
Okay.
about a new Wi-Fi technology, new to me, called Halo, HALOW. And this is a
Yeah.
competitor for LoRa, LORA, which I'd heard of. And it apparently can reach 3 kilometers with an tiny battery that will last for months. It's low power, long range, and intended for the Internet of Things to make a mesh. And so there are several of these things, and they say it's the 802.11AH standard. It operates
Okay.
in sub-gigahertz at 850 to 950 megahertz, so it can penetrate obstacles, walls, and buildings. And that means it can have a 10 times the range. So they were able to take a signal that started at like 15 megs, at 17 megs, at 250 meters, and it dropped down to 1 meg. So anyway, they were able to still continue a call over it. So it apparently can go pretty far. And
So wait,
this
and
yeah,
so this is a new Wi-Fi standard, right?
new, yeah, relatively new. Yeah, there are several
Yeah.
of these competing for the long range, low power Wi-Fi standard. Um, Halo and LoRa seem to be the big ones.
Yeah. So no products yet. This is still in research R&D phase, research development phase.
I think there are some LoRa products now, though. I think that one might be a little bit ahead, LORA, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay.
And anyway,
So
yeah,
yeah, so it's interesting. NASA was just playing around with technology, and they've been able to send a cat video from deep space back to Earth
yeah,
using IR. So the benefit of that is that you've got a directional. I believe it's a laser IR,
right.
and they're able to send high bandwidth back to Earth from deep space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
this sounds like it'd be very useful for things like air tags.
yeah, yeah. We'll see, right?
Yeah.
Technology was always in increasing,
Oh,
or
yeah.
our knowledge, right? Our knowledge level of the technology. We keep trying new things.
Yeah, this is a discussion I had on Mastodon recently. There's one guy said, the problem is humans doing stupid things. And I said, I think all of our problems are really human psychology. And this is something I've never seen anybody write this down, but I wondered about Moore's law one time, right? You have Moore's law, you double the power of computers every 18 months. And this has gone on for like 60 years through complete whole generations of technology. And my theory has been this is not a matter of physical science. This is a matter of how fast the human mind can develop. It's the only thing that's been a constant there is how long it takes for
Well,
you to actually deploy something and get it working and deploy the next thing and get it working.
yeah, but there's also an element of randomness, and I would argue, and it has to be the right person, the right technology. We've developed our knowledge enough that we can create some new technology based on what we have. And an example I'll give you is Edison
Yeah.
and Tesla. That if they were born 50 years earlier, electricity, they wouldn't be at the right place at the right time with the technology.
I don't agree. I think
You,
if Tesla had been removed, somebody else would have just taken up the slack without a significant delay. I think,
no,
yeah,
yeah, that I agree. But if Tesla were born 100 years earlier,
yeah,
then the technology, the knowledge base of the technology
right.
that
He
we
wouldn't have.
had at the time, he wouldn't, right.
That's right. I think that's what I'm saying. I think the only thing you can
Yeah.
do is you can take what's already there and you can go one step forward.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of clever people. And so it's the rate of like human understanding and ingenuity is what Moore's law is. It's not really like a fundamental physical principle.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree.
And therefore, I tend to agree with Ray Kurzweil that we're now approaching the singularity. When the AIs get smarter, they will develop at a whole much different rate. If they do, if the AGI happens or anything close to it, then you'll suddenly have a different psychology controlling development, and development will be exponentially faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I don't
So
think we'll ever reach AGI because now I understand a lot more about how AI works, and it is really, really fundamentally stupid. It's really not doing anything more than just fitting a curve through some points.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? That's what it's
Yeah.
always been about.
And however, you could ask, what are we doing as living humans? Is it really something different? I guess that's what we're going to find out experimentally over the next decade or so.
Yeah, but this is where you have people that can think outside the box, like Jobs did. If we
Yeah,
stick in the computer industry, that you can have an iPhone or you can have an iPod, or the microcomputer industry. If you remember way back when in the 80s, people are saying, "Oh, who's going to want a computer on their desk,
that's
let
right.
alone, right?
Yep.
Carry one around with you, or one that's a phone." That wasn't even dreamt of, except maybe in sci-fi movies and TV shows.
Well, this is why technologists love fantasy and science fiction and everything. That's how you think about the future. And I think
Yeah,
that's why they're more gullible for like frauds, like psychic frauds, because they're willing to entertain strange possibilities and exciting new possibilities. They're not connected to the ground.
yeah, yeah. And that's not to say all good ideas are going to be make sense. And I had a college professor that would say, when students would come up and say, I've got this great idea, and he would say, that makes as much sense as a shovel with a rope for a handle.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's nice. You can make it compact. You can put it in a backpack. You can carry it around. Except when you go to use it, it makes no sense whatsoever at all.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of things like that. A lot of the software we use has features like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I got one more story for you, Sam.
All right.
All right. This one's the electric car industry, specifically in California. And as you and most people know, PG&E is one of the largest, or the largest, power company in the United States. And rates are going up. They were responsible for several fires in California. And here we have the EV industry and the solar industry that's kind of taken a big bite out of California's profits, not the EV industry, obviously, but we're trying to go green in California. A lot of people buying EV cars, and I got to tell you, I'm one of them. I'm very pleased with the cars that I have. I
Mhm.
haven't been to a gas station in over a year because I've got a fully electric EV. Now, what the rub is, or what's going on right now, what PG&E is doing is they just got approved for another rate hike. Now,
So they
listen to
can
me
bury the
carefully.
lines.
Yeah, so yeah, to bury the lines, which is going to be impossible for a lot of areas just because of the size of the Western United States. And what people expect to be buried isn't possible, especially when you're going through the Sierra Nevadas, when you have all the rock and everything. We're talking about boring holes. That's never going to happen, right? It's too costly to do that, and ratepayers will never pay that.
But maybe
But
the fire
here's
risk is low up there.
but that's where the fires are. That's
Oh,
where the
that's bad then.
paradise.
Okay.
Yeah, that's maybe I'll share that with you next.
Yeah.
That'll be a topic for next Friday's episode,
Yeah.
kind of the paradise fire. I've researched that quite a
Mm.
bit. But
Okay.
here's where I'm going with PG&E and their rates. So they're raising the rates. Now, I'm going to mislead for just a moment here, but PG&E has what are called time of use rates. So you pay a different rate during the day, you pay a different rate in the evening, you pay a different rate in nighttime, late night. And the thought is you charge your car overnight, which makes sense when the rates are low.
Hmm.
However, PG&E is raising rates. Now, if we go with the worst possible rate, meaning the most expensive, it's looking like PG&E is going to be charging $1 a kilowatt, which is outrageously expensive over maybe the next within 2 years with PG&E's rate increases. And this is for summer peak. So this is the most expensive of all the times.
Hmm.
But next city over, you can get electricity for 19 cents at the same time. And again, I'm doing some exaggerations, some extrapolations here, but if PG&E gets to $1 a kilowatt, that's equivalent in gasoline being $10 a gallon is where I'm going with this story.
Yeah.
Now, if we go to 50 cents, which is probably what PG&E is going to be at the end of this year for the off peak, that's the equivalent of gasoline being at roughly about $5 a gallon. So this is now starting to make EVs not as attractive.
Right.
And, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen here as
I've
we go
heard this
forward.
already that EVs use up a lot of electricity and are not really a whole lot cheaper than gas.
Well, they have been in the past, but you're right with this TOU pricing. And it depends. There are people in the United States that are paying a nickel a kilowatt. If you're
That's
up in
cheap.
Washington State, if you're in North Dakota, South Dakota, depending on where you are,
Yeah.
electricity is incredibly inexpensive.
Yeah. Well,
But
I
if
was
you
reading
take,
another article and they said that not only are we not going to have enough power to power the EVs, we're already running out of power to power the data centers with AI. Apparently, the power grid is getting to be a real restriction on a lot of our technology.
yeah, well, something I learned I didn't know is in San Francisco General Hospital requires so much electricity that PG&E couldn't deliver it to them without installing a new substation. This is years ago. This is nothing new.
Yeah.
So UCSF and I'm not sure if this is in partnership with PG&E, but they have their own power generation station. So they produce, I believe, about a third of the electricity that the hospital uses because PG&E couldn't deliver it.
Yeah. Well, and with EV rollout and AI, there's going to be a lot more crazy things.
Yep, yep. And we got to factor in that cryptocurrency mining in Bitcoins, the amount of electricity that we need to keep those going.
I don't know. I think they're not a big bit per day. I bet, but it'll just depend on the price. If the price of Bitcoin goes up, it'll rise again.
Yeah, but the power, the amount of power, energy needed to do all the mining and transactions.
That depends on the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah,
So right now it's probably not much, but it will be a lot if Bitcoin goes up again.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, I think
Well,
that's
that's all I have for today.
yeah, okay. Well, we'll be back on Friday.
Sounds good.
All right.